Okay, so most of you guys completed the survey. So I sent out the email on Friday, like Friday afternoon. So for some of you guys on mainland, it's going to be at a bad time. It will be like Friday evening. And for those of you in Asia on the other side of the date line, it was in the middle of the morning. So that was a terrible time, like middle of the night. So look through your Canvas messages and see an email link from me. And I think I just titled it like, when's your ideal class time? And if you're in multiple classes with me, I sent out different links for each class. So do me a solid and click the link and just tell me what time is your ideal class time. And you're able to rank them. Don't reply to the message because I need it saved in the survey so I can know how many want it at 9 a.m., how many want it at 10 a.m. And then I only teach one other class on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And so I have to kind of just balance, like, luckily you guys, nutrition, you're a way bigger class than the other one. So might makes right. And so you guys get preference for the time. So if everyone says 9 a.m. is the best, then you guys get 9 a.m. and they'll get 10 a.m. They can suck it. But if you guys want different times, then that's a little bit easier for me. So finish that. So today I'm going at 10 because that worked for everyone. And it was kind of tied. And so the other class is at 11 o'clock because I didn't really feel like coming in at 9. And I had a COVID test scheduled. So, which isn't a big deal, but I didn't want to have to reschedule it. So anyway, that's where we're at with that. Where's my, hold on. Ha. Hold on. I'm all mixed up. I plugged in my computer cable to my light, which is wrong. Okay. All right, welcome, all 10 of you. 17, 18, hot dog. Welcome. Of the 73 in the class, I'm getting 20%. So we're gonna call that a win. 18 now. 17, someone left. They're like, over it. Okay, I'm gonna pause the recording. Okay, welcome back. If you're watching this later, say your own little prayer in your heart. How about that? Okay, so today's cool. I'm really excited about today. So we're gonna get sciencey, and I know not all y'all are science people, but we have to learn about how the body works, basic overall, the gist of it, in order for you to know why carbs are important, why proteins are important, how they're all different. So, there we go. Okay, open chat over here. Okay, so if you have questions, you can either unmute, which kind of gets weird after a while because it's tough to know who's going to unmute and who's not going to unmute. But if you want to jump into chat, I have chat open over here in my peripherals. Okay. So chapter 3, food from fuel. So why do we care about the body? Because we have to understand how things are digested at different rates. So when we talk about simple sugars versus complex sugars, or simple carbs versus complex carbs, or fats, the energy in fats, how it's different than the energy, like the release from protein. So when you're eating something, everything goes through what's called the gastrointestinal tract, or the GI tract. That's just the easiest way to remember. So I'm just going to call it the GI tract. The sight, smell, thought, taste, and sound of food, your brain will receive that input from all of your senses. And it says, we're going to eat something. And us even talking about this chapter is going to trigger a digestive response. So honestly, by the end of this lecture, if your stomach isn't gurgling, it will be, because we're going to be talking about it. And you're going to, like, your brain's going to be like, well, then let's just do the thing. So anyway, so all of that, your senses picking up on future food or imminent food, triggers a response to prepare the digestive tract to receive food. So the first thing you're going to notice is like your saliva in your mouth. You're going to get a real wet mouth. And like if you ever eat something really sour, you can kind of feel different, like saliva glands kick in. You're like, ooh, I can feel that, like right back here. And that's just different saliva glands kind of kicking in. And then things work down to the esophagus and then to the stomach. And then from there, it just kind of works its way around. And then you end up expelling it, the scientific term. And so essentially what's kind of cool is if you look at this, you are hollow. You are hollow. So from your mouth all the way through, from your top to your tail, you are one hollow tube. You could swallow a 30-foot string and have one end in your hand, one end in one hand and one end in the other hand, and have the middle going through your body. Not that I would recommend that, that would be weird, but you could, you are hollow. So when you, the thinking, hearing a description of food, hearing food being made, seeing food, smelling food, tasting or having a mouth feel. So when manufacturers are, like food scientists are making food, they're very concerned with how does it feel in your mouth? Like, is it smooth? Is it chunky? Is it crunchy? Is it dry? That mouth feel makes a food more or less satisfying, which is kind of cool. So what happens in response to all of these stimuli, to these stimulus, is you have increased heat production. So your body's going to start to kind of get warmed up. Saliva, the change in the saliva composition. So normally you just have saliva and it just helps keep your teeth from getting, like, it just helps kind of kill bacteria in your mouth. But it'll change and it'll start to have different enzymes in it to help start to break down carbs, which is kind of cool. And then your cardiovascular system, your heart just kind of kicks into gear a little bit more. Your GI tract will kick in with some enzymes and start, like, that rumbling in your stomach is the motility, is your small intestine starting to kind of do their thing. Your pancreas will kick into gear, and then your renal system, which is your kidneys, are going to start working to get rid of some of your urine volume. So they're going to kind of make your blood a little bit thinner because it's assumed that you're going to be taking in some fluids of some sort. So why do we care? Why do we care about your digestive system? Well, because it's really, really important. It is in charge of taking in food and transporting it. So not everything goes to your stomach and is just absorbed from there. That would be very easy, but it'd be very boring. It'd be very, we'd be like, and it goes to your stomach and we're done, next chapter. Fortunately though, the body is a lot more complex, which makes it much more interesting to study. So your GI tract also helps with the secretion of digestive enzymes. And that is all throughout the GI tract, or different places with different enzymes, and different macronutrients are digested in different places. Not everything happens in the stomach, not everything happens in the mouth, and not everything happens in the small intestine. So a little bit happens kind of in a bunch of different places, which is cool. Acid, so that's primarily in your stomach. Stomach has the acid. You also have mucus, so that's mostly in your small intestine, and then you have bile, and that's in your small intestine as well. We're going to talk about each of those. So the GI tract, its main goal is to help you get energy, get calories and nutrients from your food. So the absorption of end products of digestion. So breaking big things down to little things so that they can be absorbed through the small intestine. That's the goal. So its goal is to make big things small in a small version that your body can handle. So you eat a piece of steak and you can't have a piece of steak floating around in your blood. That would be weird. But you can have little amino acids and really short proteins floating around, and your body can do stuff with that. So it has to break down the pizza that you ate on Saturday night into basically protein, fats, carbs in a way that your body can actually utilize. Movement of undigested material. So not everything that you eat, especially like fibrous things, like really fiber foods, fiber foods, we'll talk about them later, but not everything can be digested. And so that is going to be eliminated, and then elimination of digestive waste products. And so really, if you start at the top, so ingestion of food is one, transportation of ingested food, really that's esophagus and the small intestine. Secretion of digestive enzymes, that's here and here. Absorption of end products, that's primarily in the small intestine. It's like 100% the small intestine actually. Movement of undigested is in the large intestine, and then elimination is out through the large intestine. So it really starts head to tail, these 1 through 6. So that's kind of nice for you to envision and kind of like relate to this picture. So this is a little bit, I'm not going to ask you to know a lot of this, like have it memorized, but this is, if you're an EXS major, this is something that you're going to need to know for physiology. If you're a nutrition science minor, this is something you're going to need to know for future nutrition classes. If you take EXS 270 with Dr. Reese, this is something that you for sure need to know. What happens in everything. We're going to go over the gist of each of these, but not in quite as much detail. We're not going to talk about like intrinsic factor and different enzymes and stuff, but the stomach is important, and then the small intestine, large intestine, and then what do each of these assisting organs do? We'll go through them, but not in very much detail. But this is a really good reference from your book. So this is figure 3.2 in your book. So the digestives, any questions? Jump into chat if you have any questions. If I know, I'm not trying to go really fast through this, and I don't have to cover a lot of slides. So if there's something where you're like, what the what? Chat it, okay? Because I could talk about this all day. All day. This is my jam. Not specifically digestion, that would be weird, but just like the human body. I love it. Okay, so how is the digestive tract, the GI tract organized? Like how is it structurally made up? And this is important for food. This is important for why things take quicker to absorb or longer to absorb. And how long does it take to digest a burger? Stuff like that. So there's different layers of the small intestine. So this is the stomach, sorry, this is the stomach. So the stomach empties out. So actually this is the small intestine, JK. And the small intestine has a bunch of different layers. So it's kind of like a garden hose. It's really, really long and pretty skinny. And let me emphasize really, really long, like 22 to 25 feet long, like right in here. Your digestive system is 22 to 25 feet long. Feet long, not inches, definitely not meters. That would be absurd. But feet, that's a long series of tubes. But the reason is because you want to have the best digestion possible, and it doesn't all happen like that. Okay, so you eat a piece of bread and it takes a hot minute for it to be digested and absorbed into your bloodstream into a usable form. You eat something like an apple, some of it is absorbed pretty quick and some of it takes a long time. Like the fleshy part of the apple is pretty quick, and then the skin and the peel of things takes a little bit longer because it has a lot more fiber and cellulose, things like that. So in order to move things efficiently, the stomach and really the small intestine as well, they have these different layers of muscles, and this is to help move things through. So it has this mucosa, this inside layer, and that's so you don't digest yourself. So that's key for like sustainability of your digestion, because you've got these digestive enzymes that are trying to break down food and break down protein, but muscle is protein. And if you didn't have this layer of mucus on the inside, kind of acting like a buffer, the enzymes would digest yourself, because muscle is made out of protein, and it's trying to digest protein. You can see how it would be a problem, right? Very circular. But you have this mucosa, and then you have these layers of, I'm gonna try and find my pointer. You have these layers of muscle, and some of them go around, they're circular, and some of them are longitudinal. They go like along the length of the small intestine tube. And their job is to move food, but move it along. So the long ones will kind of contract, and then the small ones will also contract. So it's kind of like mush food and then move it along. It's pretty cool. We'll talk about that in a bit. And then you have these round circles everywhere. We're gonna find one like here. There's a sphincter here. So a sphincter, and sometimes I say sphincter and people are like, oh, like your butt. Yes, your anus is a sphincter. A sphincter is any muscle that is round in shape. So your eyes, the lens of your eye is a sphincter because it's a round muscle and it gets smaller when there's a lot of light, and then it dilates big and open when there's not a lot of light. So it helps adjust the amount of light coming into the back of your eye. And if there's too much, it needs to get really small. And if there's not enough, like at night, it gets really big. But it's a round circular muscle. You have one, you have a bunch. Oh, jumping into chat. You have a bunch of sphincters, like the top of your stomach, the bottom of your stomach, from your small intestine to your large intestine, and then out your large intestine. Do people ever have issues with layers of their GI tract from mixes they need surgery, medication, etc.? Yeah, we're going to talk about some digestive issues on Wednesday when we finish up this chapter, like Crohn's disease, diverticulitis, celiac falls into that category, IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, and then there's also irritable bowel, yes, irritable bowel, and then irritable bowel, it's not a syndrome, I think it's just condition. It's when it's not quite as chronic. Anyway, there's a version of it where it's just not as, disease. There's one where it's even more common. So anyway, yeah, there's a bunch we're going to talk about it. And it could be because bacteria builds up, food gets, IBS deals with the large intestine, yeah. Food gets caught, there's low motility for some reason, and it'll just get caught up in there, and then it'll start to eat away because it's not moving very well. So there's a lot of different reasons. So here's another sphincter. Sphincters in action. When closed, so this is from the small intestine coming into the large intestine. And so it's it acts as a one-way valve because you don't want, what's cool here is, so your little appendix. So this is right here. So this little area here. So this is your little appendix. So it's on your right side. So when you have food coming from your small intestine into your large intestine, you don't want backflow. You don't, because this is going up, and gravity even it works in your body. So you don't, it's going to be pushing the food up through your large intestine over. So it's going to push it up and then over and then down. But as food is being digested and absorbed and everything up here, you don't want backflow to come into the small intestine, because that's no good. Because the kind of like the pH in the environment in the large intestine is very different than the environment in the small intestine. So this is an example of a sphincter, and it just closes up real tight so that the food coming out, the digestive matter and stuff coming out from the small intestine dumps into the large intestine, but it doesn't go back in. Cool, huh? And then you have your little appendix, unless you've had it out, then you don't. So how does food move through? How do you get it 20 some odd feet from your mouth to where it can be digested, where it can be absorbed? So as food travels down, it's a physical, mechanical mushing. So there's something called peristalsis and segmentation. And there are two different types of motions that the small intestine will, and the esophagus, but the digestive tract in general will do. So you saw how we have two different types of muscles within the structure of the small intestine and the esophagus and stuff. And it's really the whole, let's just say the whole digestive system in general. Peristalsis is going to be those longitudinal muscles. And so its job is to move food through like a little conveyor belt from A to B. So it's these long wave-like muscular contractions. And so its job is to transport food along, to keep it moving from move along, move along, move along. But you don't want to just moving along because it might not be absorbed. It's just sitting basically on a conveyor belt moving along, but you want it to be kind of absorbed and kind of broken down even more as it's going. So that's what segmentation is for. So that's what those round circular muscles are going to be doing within the digestive system, is it's going to be in segments, breaking up the food, breaking up the material into smaller and smaller bits, kind of like a mechanical digestion, to better mix all these digestive enzymes with your food, which is kind of cool. So it's like, think of it like kneading bread. And once you knead it, and then you're going to roll it into like long breadsticks or something like that. So you knead it, and then you roll it into long breadsticks. And then you have another section come, you're going to knead it, and you're going to roll it into long breadsticks. So that's kind of what's happening along your digestive system. It's pretty cool. So the segmentation is the series of muscular contractions in the small intestines, divides and mixes the chyme. So this is a new word. So if you haven't finished your vocab quiz yet, chyme is really what we call digestive matter. So we don't call it really food. We don't really call it food. We call it chyme. So once you have eaten it, put it in your mouth, it's food really, but once you swallow it and it's in the system, it's in the system. We call it chyme. So as the chyme,
sorry, what's the difference between chyme and bolus?
A bolus is just a ball of chyme. So when you swallow something, you're not swallowing a smooth stream of stuff. You swallow it a chunk at a time, you know? And so that ball of chyme is considered a bolus. Do you see here? This is a bolus of chyme. So it's like a clump of it. Because you know, when you're like, if you're like chewing something and you swallow it, you don't swallow a little bit at a time, you swallow kind of a lot. And then you chew and chew and chew and chew, and then you swallow, and then you chew and chew and chew and you swallow. So each of those chunks of food that you're swallowing down, that would be a bolus. And so food is moving through. It initially moves through in these boluses until it gets small enough that it's going to be broken down, and then throughout your small intestines become more liquidy. And in your stomach, it's going to be more liquidy. And then it's not going to be in boluses anymore. It might just be in a more smooth stream. Does that help?
Yes,
yeah, exactly. Chyme is just like the contents of the bolus until we get into the large intestine, and then we're going to change the name. But anyway, for now, a bolus would be the snowball. Exactly. So food is digested by the bite. The food's digestion starts in the mouth. Yeah. So there's physical digestion, like mechanical digestion. That's the stomach breaking things down, and then the small intestine breaking things down. And then there's chemical digestion. So not everything needs to be physically broken down. There has to be a chemical reaction to break things apart even more, to break bonds between carbohydrates, to break bonds between large fats, to break bonds between proteins, to break them into forms that are smaller that the body can actually do something with. Can't do anything with your pizza crust, but it can do a lot with glucose. So it has to break it down into a form that the body can actually utilize. So there's that chemical breakdown. That's what the enzymes are for. The enzymes aren't going to make your pizza smaller. They're going to make the components of it break down into a form that's usable. So enzymes themselves are just proteins that catalyze chemical reactions. Catalyze means to cause. So they're proteins that cause chemical reactions. So here's an enzyme. Enzyme's called sucrase for all you nerds that need to know the names of things. So sucrase is going to work with sucrose, which is a sugar. So the sugar comes on, the enzyme comes in, the sugar comes on, it binds, and sucrase's job is to break it apart. So it does that, and it separates the glucose from the fructose, and those go on their merry way because your body can't like absorb sucrose. It can't do anything with disaccharides, but it can do everything with monosaccharides. So it takes the glucose and the fructose and it breaks them apart so they can be absorbed. What can people do if they have too low of an enzyme count? They don't. People don't have low enzymes unless it's some random genetic disorder where their genes aren't expressing properly, but people don't have low digestive enzymes. Fortunately, that's not a thing. You can be unable to, like if you're lactose intolerant, that's kind of a thing. And you can take digestive enzymes for that, but it's not really a problem with proteins or carbs or fats. Most people, unless you don't have bile. If you had your gallbladder removed, sometimes you can have a reduced ability to digest protein, but your liver makes bile, so that's not really a problem. Like specifically what enzyme? That's just a random genetic thing. And you can sometimes you can supplement with like papaya enzymes. Papaya extract is good for digestive enzymes, but it's not like one-to-one, it's not perfect. So other types of secretions that help chemically break down. So Kate, if you want to let me know what kind of enzymes you specifically mean, that would be really great. Other secretions that also help chemically break things down. So acids in the stomach, we're gonna talk about that. Bases, so alkalines in the small intestine to neutralize the acids. Bile from the gallbladder and the liver, and that's gonna help break down fats. And then mucus is going to make sure that you don't eat yourself. that would make dinner deadly. So there's things called, and they're like the term enzyme is used a lot interchangeably with other things. And so that makes sense, yeah. So there's other things when we're like, there's the main organs of the digestive system. So like the stomach and the small intestine and things like that. Then there's accessory organs, things that help, that are necessary, but they're not the main digestive system. So for example, the saliva glands, and you have 3 of them and they're in your mouth. And so there's a really big one right back here. Sometimes you can feel that you're like, whoo, I'm hungry. I can feel myself starting to salivate. And then underneath here. So right in the front of the mouth under here, and then in the back is another one. And these are all real big ones. And their job is to dump saliva, technically called salivary amylase or salivary lipase, you know all those, into the mouth to help start the breakdown of fats and carbs. So their job is to moisten and lubricate food because it's really hard to swallow cotton balls. But if you can make it wet, then it's easier to slide down your gullet. And it also begins the digestive enzyme, the digestion of starch. So like if you eat candy, you can absorb some of that actually through your mouth. There's really good science behind endurance athletes that will take in a sugar drink during a race, and they don't even swallow it because nothing happens in your stomach for carbs. They'll just hold it in their mouth and then they'll absorb it in through their mouth. If it's a small enough sugar molecule that's in their drink, they'll just swig it. They'll just like swish it around in their mouth. And then they'll spit it out after a while, and they'll get some of the sugars through their mouth. Their mouth can absorb some of them. So that's pretty cool, huh? So other accessory organs are your gallbladder. So your liver processes bile, so it makes bile. It's a chemical factory, so it makes stuff, but it also stores stuff to be made into other things. So it's a very important organ. Can't really do without it. You can donate part of it though. You can be a living liver donor. You can donate 1/3 of your liver and it'll grow back, just like a lizard tail. And it's an active warehouse. So it can store things and it can take stuff in and make it into things that you need and ship it out, or it can just make things to be used in other places. The liver is awesome. It also helps clean things out, and it's part of your natural detox system. So don't go buy poop tea, just have a healthy liver. Save yourself 20 bucks. So it helps with the creation of bile, and bile helps digest fat. And that the gallbladder, its job is really to dump that bile into the small intestine. But if you get your gallbladder removed, like if you get gallstones, or just like a blocked bile duct, sometimes they'll have to remove your gallbladder. We have a professor here on campus, and his wife is 33 weeks pregnant, and she has had problems with her gallbladder, like most of her pregnancy. And she had to get her gallbladder removed because she was in, like, when you get a gallstone attack, it is terrible. And it only happens at night because it's just like the worst. It's just like this angry little organ. And she was in agony for 12 hours. It was like her 3rd attack. And the doctors were like, listen, lady, it's not going to get any better. We got to remove it. And they did. And it was nervous. Like, they were nervous because she's pregnant, and you don't like to go under anesthesia when you're pregnant because it can affect the baby. But prayer works. She was fine. The baby's fine. And her gallbladder doesn't give her any problems anymore because it's sitting in a biohazard bucket somewhere. So she can still digest fat. She just has a harder time with it now because it's not going to be collected and concentrated in the gallbladder anymore. It's just going to be released from the liver. So it's still available, but it's not quite as good. So the small intestine is through here, and it's not necessarily an accessory organ. It's kind of a primary organ, like really primary, but it helps it uses the bile to break down fat. So this word emulsifies, it might have been one of your vocab words, but emulsifies just means to break down. So it helps, the bile breaks down fats into forms that your body can absorb. So if you put butter on your bread, the butter is a great fat, but your body can't do anything with butter. You're not gonna have little chunks of butter floating around in your blood, but you can have little chunks of triglycerides floating around in your blood or fatty acids floating around in your blood, and your body goes, ooh, I know what to do with this. This is fantastic. Thank you so much. So the bile helps break those down into little forms that your body can go, ah, oh, solid. Now we can make a hormone, or now we can make positive cholesterol, like good cholesterol, things like that. And then with the bile for the fat, we'll talk a lot about this in chapter 4, actually. We're in 5. Do we talk about the spleen at all? I heard it's pretty useless, or we don't know what it does. The spleen is your immune system. So it helps collect lymph and clean out lymph and clean out, it's the immune system. So my grandpa had spleen cancer and he had a splenectomy, and you can live without it. You can live without your appendix, you can live without your spleen, you can live without like half of your lungs, you can live without half of your brain, as long as you get it taken out when you're young. You can live without your gallbladder, you can live without a third of your liver, but it'll regrow like a lizard's tail. You can live without, you can have part of your small intestine removed. You can have your large intestine shortened. You can have your stomach stapled. You can really have a lot of your body. It's not all useless. You can go without parts of your body and still be okay. In the small, so the colon, the large intestine, sometimes also just shortened and called the colon, that bile will be kind of reabsorbed and used again, or if it's kind of bound up in fiber, it will be, if it's trapped by fiber, it'll be eliminated, and then your body is just going to be making bile to replace that bile. But sometimes they can be reabsorbed and used again, or it'll be eliminated. So it's not like a perfect system, but it works pretty good. So in the small intestine, most bile is reabsorbed and sent back to the liver for reuse. And then if it doesn't get reabsorbed, sometimes it'll get a little bit in the large intestine, but mostly it'll be trapped in the fiber. But it's okay because you make a bunch of it. Where does the band go on a gastric bypass? There's different kinds. There's lap band, which makes it smaller. Gastric bypasses, they actually cut out part of your stomach, and your stomach, like basically the top of your stomach is attached to your small intestine. So instead of having a stomach that's like that big, you have a stomach that's like that big. And so that you feel fuller faster, and then you eat less food. And gastric bypass, lap band, stapling, things like that are one of the only cures for diabetes. Like if someone is morbidly overweight and they have diabetes and it's uncontrolled, if they get stomach stapling and they lose 100, 200 pounds, their diabetes will go away. It's pretty cool. But not that everyone has diabetes needs to do that. Generally, it's just that they lose the fat, the extra fat, and their diabetes will go away. It's pretty cool. That's type 2. That's type 2. Type 1 is genetic and you're born with it and you can't really do anything about it. Like just manage it. But type 2, you can reverse. Does gastric bypass affect having children? No. No. If you get your uterus taken out, that really affects you having children. Or your fallopian tubes or your ovaries. That'll definitely reduce your ability to have children. I don't know what you want. What do you mean by that, iPhone? And I know that's not your name. My sister does that too. Okay, so the gallbladder, it stores and secretes bile. Bile helps with the breakdown of fats. Fats are key. You need fats in your diet, and that's why your body has a bunch of different things that are made to help you get fats out of your food. The pancreas, it does a ton of stuff. It's not just, I mean, it is associated with diabetes, and we hear about pancreas problems and diabetes, and they're connected, but it also secretes something called bicarbonate. Bicarbonate. And this helps neutralize the chyme as it's coming out of the stomach. It's super acidic, super acidic. And your small intestines don't want that acid. They don't want it quite as acidic. They want it to be neutralized. They have, so bicarbonate is basically alkaline. It's alkalinic, and its job is to neutralize it, to bring it up to a pH that the body can deal with. So that's what's happening like right in here. So this is coming out of the stomach right here. You see that? Pretend. Okay, so the small intestine is looping around and the gallbladder is dumping the bile in here. So it can start digesting fats right as soon as it comes out of the stomach. So that's pretty cool. And then the pancreas is secreting it also and helping neutralize that chyme, the pH of the chyme as it's coming out of the stomach. So that's kind of important because again, you don't want to have, if you have a really thick mucus layer, that's totally cool, but the small intestines would have to be really thick in order to accommodate that chyme. So anyway, so then the pancreas also secretes digestive enzymes for mostly carbs, but we'll talk about those in a bit. So putting it all together, oops. Sorry, let me move my face. Your mouth is the start of everything. And you have the enzymes and there's two, I'm not going to quiz you on these. I was going to be all mean. Like last semester, I was really mean and I quiz everyone on everything. And that was just stupid because it's not really necessary. If you have problems with your pancreas secreting bicarbonate, what kind of experience would you have? You would have Crohn's, diverticulitis, ulcers, ulcerative colitis. You would have the pH of the chyme in your small intestines would eat away at the lining of your small intestine. So if you have decreased pancreatic function for whatever reason, and it's not secreting bicarbonate, then you would have perforations of the small intestine, you'd have ulcers in the small intestine, you'd have decreased ability to absorb carbohydrates, decreased ability to digest fat. Proteins would be intact because that requires acid. But the enzymes might be denatured. You'd have decreased ability to absorb nutrients in general. I think all three macros would be affected negatively. But you'd have like holes in your small intestine because the bicarbonate helps to neutralize that as the food is coming out of the stomach. So see if I can find a good picture. Not really. Okay, here's a good picture. So the stomach is here and it dumps stuff out and you can kind of see the pancreas is here, is this yellow thing. And so because it's dumping out right at the beginning of the small intestine, it's helping neutralize it for the rest of the small intestine. So it doesn't matter, honestly, and I'm not a mind reader, but you're thinking, oh, we'll just eat a more alkaline diet, eat a less acidic diet. And the pH of your stomach is always the same no matter what you eat. So if your diet is 100% meat or 100% kale, the pH of your stomach is anywhere from 2 to 4. It doesn't matter. So eating an alkaline diet does nothing to affect the pH of your body. It does zero. It just costs you more. Okay, so eating meat doesn't make your body acidic, and drinking celery juice every morning doesn't make your body more alkaline. Your body has an entire organ dedicated to neutralizing the pH of the contents as they come out of the stomach, regardless of if it's cow hooves or spinach crusts. Like, it doesn't really matter. So you can't really change your diet if you have a low bicarbonate. If anything, you just take an antacid, which impedes the digestion of some things too, which is not ideal. Okay, moving on. That's just another one of my TED Talks. As you swallow, you're going to be kind of like making these boluses, like we talked about, like Micah helped explain. So the chyme is like the smooth stream, and the bolus is like the snowball, exactly. As you swallow, the epiglottis closes off the air passage, preventing choking, so you don't go down. Like when you swallow something, you're like, it went down the wrong pipe. Like, it actually literally does go down the wrong pipe. If it can actually come on accident into the top of into the trachea and towards the lungs, and the body will do its absolute darndest to make sure you don't get food into your lungs, because that is no good. That is no good. And so that's why you'll choke and choke and choke and choke, and maybe even like vomit, because your body is trying to push it out of your trachea and is doing everything possible to keep you from inhaling that food. No good. You don't want to have it go down the wrong pipe. So in the mouth, they have the salivary amylase and the lingual lipase, and those jobs are to digest starches and fats, or to start the breakdown of starches and fats. It doesn't do a whole bunch. If it's a really simple fat, it does, or a really simple sugar, it does, but fats, it takes a long time for that. So that's later on. And then the saliva is to moisten the food, to make it easier to swallow, make it easier to slide down your esophagus. Have you ever like dry swallowed a pill or something, and you're just like, you can feel it get stuck, and you're like, you know, and you're like, I have to drink a bunch of water because you didn't have enough saliva, and you tried to swallow it down with some saliva, but you didn't have enough, and it ends up getting stuck. And then you kind of, that's the worst. You can kind of feel it like, oh, it's right there. I hate that. I can't dry swallow things. My husband can. He's really weird. He'll take like a pain medicine and be like, yeah, I'm good. I'm like, oh, I can feel that. Food that goes down your lungs over time going down the wrong pipe, does it just stay in your lungs and so minimal that doesn't matter? Oh, it definitely matters. Your body does everything it can to push it back out. That's why you will sometimes vomit, because you're trying so hard to cough it and get it out of your lungs. If it comes into your lungs, it can cause an infection, and that's no good. It can cause pneumonia, an infection, and edema, and none of the good things that you want in your life. None of that would I project onto you. So no, your body does everything it can to keep it out of the trachea. It's very sensitive at the top of the trachea, right in here. So if it actually, and it has to come up and over into the trachea. So if it does start to come in here, your body's like, yeah, it doesn't do it very well. So the esophagus is really cool. Its only job is to just, it's not a free fall into your stomach, but its job is to kind of slow the descent and make things happen kind of in an organized, controlled manner. It's a conveyor belt, but its job is to kind of help things like dump into the stomach in a controlled manner. So its main job is to transport food from your mouth to your stomach. And then it has an esophageal sphincter to direct traffic, meaning it's a one-way. But if we look here, right up, okay, look, if you look right here, this is the top of your esophagus coming in. So esophagus comes in, esophagus comes in, esophagus comes in. And right here, you have the sphincter. And its job is to make sure that food comes in, but as you're digesting, it doesn't come back out. So if you ever have heartburn, or like it hurts like right in here, or if you ever get sick and you vomit, it burns your esophagus because the contents of your stomach are so acidic, but you have such a thick mucus layer that it's okay, because you have so much mucus, and the inside, it like the lining of your stomach replaces it, like regenerates every 7 days. So it's always like you're always getting essentially a new stomach, or at least the inside lining of your stomach. But your esophagus doesn't have that thick mucus layer to protect it from the acid of your stomach. And remember, the acid of your stomach is the same no matter if you eat kale or if you eat pork chops, okay? It doesn't really matter. It's always the same. But that's why you have this sphincter to keep things from flowing back up. So if you get sick and you vomit, you can feel that burn. You're like, it burns. Yeah, that's the acid from your stomach contents, just like burning, and it really does burn. So sometimes people with eating disorders, especially bulimia, they can get esophageal cancer, or people that have chronic acid reflux. So they chronically just feel heartburn. They can get esophageal cancer just because the lining of the esophagus will wear out over time, and then it doesn't, like the cells just become damaged and they're more likely to become cancerous. So anyway, so the stomach, just like the small intestine, is pretty cool. It has these layers of muscle, but the small intestine has 2 different layers, long and skinny, and then circular. This one has the long and skinny and the circular, but then it also has diagonal. So it can mesh things in 3D. It's not just trying to have things go from A to B, like from top to bottom. That's what the circular ones are going to do, top to bottom. And then the circular ones are going to be squeezing it like this, like here. This would be circular. But then the diagonal is going to go like this. So if you're on the inside, it's going to go like this. It's very important that you understand this. Once the layer of the esophagus wears down, is there any way to repair that? Yeah, let it rest. So the body is amazing at repairing itself. It's the best, it's its own best first aid. It knows how to repair itself. It knows how to fight off infections and everything like that 99% of the time. So if that layer of the esophagus wears down, a doctor will generally, like someone that gets chronic heartburn, they'll have them never lay down flat. They'll have them, when they sleep, they'll sleep at an incline. So that's why old people get those beds that have like the adjustable head so that they can sleep with their head a little bit higher, and that prevents acid reflux. Or they'll have them sleep on their side, and that can help prevent it. They'll have them change out their change their diet so they're not eating big meals. They're eating more smaller meals so that their stomach doesn't fill up and regurgitate it up. It'll stay smaller. Sometimes they'll put them on like Pepcid AC or acid blockers, but that diminishes the ability of those digestive enzymes in the stomach to do their job. So they're not getting as many nutrients out of their food. So that's not ideal. But there's some kind of lifestyle changes that people can make. And sometimes that has to do with there's too much fat, like there's visceral fat around the organs, and that's kind of putting pressure on the stomach. And so sometimes it's because someone needs to lose weight. They need to lose fat. There's just a lot of fat in and around organs, especially the stomach. And so if someone loses that fat through diet and lifestyle changes, then they can relieve some of that pressure on their stomach and then relieve some of that chronic heartburn and indigestion, acid indigestion. And that'll keep the esophagus from getting irritated chronically over time, and then it'll allow it to heal. So the stomach is pretty rad. As you get really good at eating a lot, like professional like hot dog eaters, contest eating people, they have stomachs that are ginormous. They have stretched their stomach because it's just all muscle. They can stretch their stomach to be very, 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 very large without it reaching a point where the stomach says, this is ridiculous. We need to get rid of half of this. And they regurgitate it, but they have trained their stomach to expand very large. And that's one of the problems with people that are obese, like not just fat, like obese, is they generally eat very, very large meals. And that stretch response is one of the things that helps them feel full. And it takes more food for them to feel full, to like have the stomach stretched to the point where their body says, oh, this is enough food. Thank you. We're good. And so that's why making the stomach smaller surgically can help them feel fuller with less calories. They don't have to eat quite as large of a meal and as many calories before their stomach will say, oh, we've stretched, we're full now. Because that signals one of the chemicals that says we're full. So a little sidebar about that. So this is the stomach, and it's pretty awesome. So this is the pH. This is what I'm talking about. After it has been stretched, can you make your stomach smaller without surgery? You can, it just takes a long time. The stomach is like a balloon. Like when you inflate a balloon and you inflate a balloon at all, it doesn't really go back to as small as it was before. It still kind of looks a little like, right? The stomach is kind of like that. So when you stretch it, it will go back a little bit smaller because the body is very reactive to what you do. So it's like, oh, we don't need to get we're not getting quite as big anymore. We're not eating 2,000 calories in a meal. We're not eating 10 cups of food. We're only eating 6 cups of food now. So it's not going to stretch as much, but it might not feel as full. And so that person might have a harder time eating less more often because they just don't feel full. And that sucks. If you ever you eat a meal and you're like, that's nice, I'm satisfied. Like that kind of triggers your brain, like, okay, we're good, we're stop eating. But imagine if you never feel that. Right? That's really hard to be like, well, I feel like I should eat more because I don't feel full, like I'm not satisfied yet. And one of the joys of eating is to feel full, to feel not full, but just to feel content. And to not be able to get that because your stomach is so small and you're like, well, I can only eat this little bit. It makes it hard to have that be a sustainable life. But they can totally do it. It's totally doable. They just have to have really good discipline and intense motivation to do that. But the stomach stapling and the lap band and the gastric and all those types of things, there's ones that are reversible too. And it's always covered by Medicare. It's always covered by insurance because it's It's like, it works. But they can go in and they can make the stomach smaller with a band. And then after the person loses the weight, they can remove that band, and that will give them time to have the stomach naturally shrink down to a more normal size, still large, but less large. And then they can have that band removed. And then it's not like something that's always going to be a problem, because they will train themselves to like change their lifestyle to eat a little bit less. So yes, it's just harder, but totally doable. Yeah. Is it the stretch of the stomach or a nerve that makes you feel full? Both. It's both. So there's leptin and gastrin, which are the two main enzymes, like chemicals or hormones really, with digestion and satiation, feeling satisfied. We're going to talk about that also in this chapter. And the mechanical stretch of the stomach is kind of what triggers that. That's why they say eat slow, chew your food thoroughly, all these wonderful things, because it takes a minute, it takes 20 minutes to feel full, even after you've hit your maximum capacity. So that's why they say eat slow, so that your brain has time to receive that input that we're full, we've stretched, and then for that to be interpreted as we're full, like thank you next, like move on, lady. So yeah, it's both. So here's the pH of your body. And this is important because some diets are saying that it helps with the alkalinity of your diet, or don't eat this because it's too acidic, or eat this because it's alkaline, or this will help neutralize your body or detox your body or whatever. And that's crap. Your body is amazing. And unless you have some diagnosed disease, your body can do everything that you need it to do. You don't need to buy a special something or other to do it for you. And you don't need a special diet. You don't need a detox. That's not a thing. Because you have stomach, skin, liver, lungs, kidneys. Yeah, it's a lot. 2 kidneys, I said it twice. Okay, so distilled water is at a 7. Okay, so that's pretty good. Your blood is at a 7.4. Not a 7.5, not an 8. You don't want your blood more alkaline. You don't want it more basic. If it does, you die. You don't want it more acidic, because if it does, you die. So you can't change the pH of your blood. It's a real small range, 7.2 to 7.4. That's it. Anything lower or higher and you die. Okay? It doesn't matter what your diet is. It really doesn't. Your saliva in your mouth, it changes a lot based on what you're eating. So your saliva is reactive, which is pretty cool. Your urine has a pretty big range, and this depends on what you're eating and what your body is trying to eliminate. That is a good thing. So this also helps you regulate the pH of your blood. So if your body is too alkaline, it'll raise the alkalinity of your urine. And if your body is too acidic, it'll increase the acidity. It'll drop the pH of your urine. So that's pretty cool. So your urine is reactive. Your kidneys are reactive. Some foods that you eat are going to be a little bit more acidic. So your citruses, if you drink vinegar, don't, that's just weird. But like your citruses are going to be a little bit more acidic. Not a big deal. It doesn't kill you, because orange juice is pretty good for you. But your stomach is anywhere from 1 to 3. I said 2 to 4, I was wrong. It's 1 to 3. So it's extremely acidic. This is why it can kind of burn when it comes up. And this is why you have the bicarbonate for your pancreas to neutralize it as it goes out. Things that are more alkaline, more basic. So milk of magnesia, which is, no, don't drink that. It's gross. Amnesia. I forgot what I was talking about. Ammonia, bleach, oven cleaner. Don't drink these, please. This is death, and that's just dumb. Baking soda. Bile is very alkaline, so it's trying to help, because it's dumped in right as the food is coming out of the stomach. So bile helps neutralize the contents that chyme. The chyme as it's coming out of the stomach. Bile is very, very basic. It's very alkaline, and so it's helping to neutralize things. And then the pancreatic juices, the bicarbonates, they are on a range. So if the chyme coming out of the stomach is more alkaline, it'll be more acidic. And if it's less alkaline, more acidic, and it'll dump out stuff that's more basic. So, because its job is to make things 7.4. That's it. Everything has to be at 7.4. Very small range. If it's not, you're dead. Vinegar does not help with digestion. Amy, I love your questions. You always ask the most random questions, and I love it. Keep it coming, kid. Apple cider vinegar people swear by because it helps, they say it helps with digestion. And that's only if you get the good stuff with what's called mother. If you get it with like a little sediment at the bottom, you shake it up and you drink it with the mother. Some people swear that that helps with digestion. Great. You don't need it though. Your stomach is very well equipped to digest anything and everything that's coming out will already be neutralized for the small intestine. So if you mentally feel like it helps, great. The world has gone on for millennia without everyone drinking apple cider vinegar, and we're all okay. But if you feel like it helps, then great, do it. Mix it with some tea, however you want to do it. I was on the apple cider vinegar bandwagon for a while. Don't take the gummies though. The gummies are just stupid. And I would do a couple ounces and I would add it with a little bit of water because it burns, because it's really, really acidic. It's not this acidic, but it's kind of in here. I would mix it with a little bit of like apple juice or something like that. And I just shoot it. Water, a little honey and lemon. Do it. If it works for you, do it. The stupid companies just want your money. Amanda speaks truth. Okay, well, we got to be done. So we're going to stop here at small intestine. So thank you all for coming to my TED Talk. Thank you all for being here. Really good questions. I love it. You guys have really good questions. Okay, so come back on Wednesday. We're going to finish out the chapter, and there's at least one learning assignment for this chapter. So do it or save it, but make sure you do the vocab quiz, and then we're going to have a review quiz later on, and we're good. Okay. See you guys later. Bye.